The city was undergoing a horrific wave of violence as a result of the crack epidemic.
United States Marshal, open the door!
DC in the early 1990s came to be known as the murder capital of the country.
The crime got so bad, we were losing like 400 or 500 a year, and like 2 a night were being murdered.
See, Red, you got another murder victim on camera. It's over.
A fatal shooting in the nation's capital. Authorities in Washington, D.C. responded to an incident Thursday night. Police believe it was a drive-by shooting. Investigators say 2 male suspects in a light-colored Nissan sedan fired at the victims with an AK-style rifle. 6 people were struck by gunfire. 5 of the victims were male and 1 female.
In the Trinidad neighborhood in Northeast on Brentwood Road, police received multiple 911 calls from people about gunshots in the area. When they arrived, they found 3 people shot. A man and a woman were shot in the leg and are expected to be okay. The 3rd victim died at the hospital. It's unclear at this time if the 2 shootings in the district were connected.
A wild night here in Southeast D.C. 1 man was shot to death, a woman was hurt, and dozens of gunshots were fired, many of them right here on this crime scene off of Congress and Savannah Streets in Southeast D.C.
Police are searching for the gunman who shot a man and a child in Southeast this morning. Officers say the pair were walking toward Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue near Parkland Place when they heard gunshots. Well, the man was shot in his arm, that child in the thigh.
We're looking at a teenage girl who was just shot in the leg near the Giant at 7th and P Streets Northwest on a Sunday afternoon. The night before, and just blocks away, a 19-year-old boy was shot in the leg and taken to the hospital.
5 people have been shot at 3 spots in the city. 2 east of the river, 1 in Northwest in Brightwood Park. Now, 4 of them are expected to survive. 3 of them were kids under the age of 18. One of those young people was a 14-year-old shot in the chest. He survived.
Police say around 3:30 in the afternoon, 4 men walked into New Creation Hair Salon Plus and started shooting. The shop was crowded. People scattered. The suspects ran off. Police later collect evidence, check for fingerprints, and recover a shot-up car from the scene.
She was like, "Is that my son?"
ANC Commissioner Regina Pixley ran into the victim's mother, yet another woman who will bury a child far too early. She says it's up to the community to help heal these streets and save our families.
DC police are investigating a homicide that happened in Southwest Washington. 16-year-old Dominique Franklin was found shot to death inside a vacant apartment this morning on M Street. We don't know what led up to that shooting, but police are offering $25,000 for the answers that help them get there.
All right, now we're going to talk about another violent 24 hours in D.C. 2 teens were shot and 1 of them died.
So police found 16-year-old Stephen Brathwaite murdered on 24th Place in Southeast. Another teen was shot in the arm on Valley Avenue, just over 2 miles away.
Just 11. Karan was shot after a fight last night. Police are still looking for the person who pulled the trigger.
But what we can tell you is that, again, 2 men shot overnight, both of them taken to the hospital, one of them dead, the other expected to survive. The gunman still out there on the streets, no arrest at this point.
DC police are still searching for the man behind a road rage attack. Investigators say the victim may have run into the back of a dark-colored sedan in the 3rd Street Tunnel near Mass Ave on Tuesday afternoon. So the driver got out and opened fire and wounded that man. Bruce LeShan tells us the victim is now fighting for his life.
Police headquarters right back there, the 3rd Street Tunnel right here. And police just super frustrated that a fender bender could spiral so far out of control.
The most chilling thing that you can see, you can become involved in a minor traffic crash, and then the other person gets out the car and just starts firing a gun into your car.
The AAA says there have been at least 7 violent road rage attacks across the region just since January.
One woman was shot 3 times. An Uber driver pulls a knife on another person.
The official start of summer was also a violent one, especially in Southeast D.C. 5 people shot on this block outside the Berry Farm Recreation Center Monday afternoon, including a young boy. They were all transported to the hospital.
Children should be able to come out and play.
The neighborhood commissioner in this area pointed out what she believes is the big problem on this block, the old Berry Farm neighborhood currently being redeveloped.
The windows are taken out.
Rhonda Edward Hines wants more police patrolling this area, even though those homes are vacant.
I just don't understand why we still have the crowds that we have down here.
The suspect sped off in this silver Nissan, and while police were tracking that car down, they were also still at the scene of Sunday's deadly shooting just a few blocks away in Ward 8, where a 9-year-old girl was shot, along with 2 women and this 15-year-old honor student. Maurice Scott died in that shooting while they were all walking to the store on Wheeler Road.
3 things I like: basketball, I like school.
Ward 8 Councilman Trayon White says they need a solution quickly that does not involve police.
We can't just stand by and keep letting this happen. And the police department, we don't know what their strategy is.
There have been 20 murders in Ward 8 since the start of the year, slightly behind neighboring Ward 7, where there have been 23 murders, making up most of the killings in D.C. so far this year. The scene of these shootings already had extra police presence. They were identified by police and the mayor's office weeks ago as targets for their summer crime initiative to reduce violence in high-crime neighborhoods. And you know, Leslie, people really they're just terrorized in these neighborhoods. They're scared to talk to us on camera, and they're also scared to talk to police, fearing at some point they're going to become a target.
And that is part of the problem, right? Because police need them to talk to get these suspects off the street, but the suspects are out there, which is why they don't want to talk.
Right, so you're looking at a catch-22 in this case. They're scared of the crooks who are still out there, and they're scared to talk to police. But I think we're really going to have to work on building this relationship between people in these communities and police to try and get these crooks off the streets a little faster.
It's clear there is so much work to do.
That's right, Annie. We are learning that 4 men were shot out just outside of the 7-Eleven you're looking at right here behind me. But what's perhaps more concerning is that the mass shooters that caused all of this chaos, they are still out there on the streets. All of this going down just after midnight, but now more than 5 hours later. This is what we're looking at this morning: police cars, crime tape, and dozens of evidence markers, evidence that police seem to now be picking up this morning. But we can't tell you this all happened where South Capitol Street turns into MLK in Southeast. All 4 men who were shot, they were rushed to the hospital, and 2 of them, I gotta tell you, are in pretty bad shape this morning. They're facing life-threatening injuries.
Good morning. A little after 9 o'clock this morning, officers from the 6th District reported for the call for a shooting in Marvin Gaye Park, which is right here in the 5300 block of Dix Street, Northeast. When they arrived on the scene, they found 3 victims suffering non-life-threatening gunshot wounds. 2 of the victims were juveniles, and 1 of the victims was an adult.
So, Chief, right in the same area overnight, we understand there was a double shooting, 1 fatality.
Yeah, that wasn't in this immediate vicinity. That was on north of here, closer to the Prince George's County line. Okay, and there was a double shooting up there, and we have 1 adult male that was deceased in that incident.
So at this point, you're not thinking there's a connection?
Doesn't appear to be right now in any way related.
Good morning, Annie. Look, this neighborhood right here in Kenilworth, people who live here, they just cannot catch a break. It is just heartbreaking. You can see right over here is a makeshift memorial, balloons, teddy bears, liquor bottles, to remember a person that was just killed 5 days ago. And then right next to it, right over here, you see the crime scene. That's latest shooting that happened, again, just last night. No, we can't tell you that this shooting happened around 10 o'clock on Sunday evening. This is at 45th Street and Douglas Street in Northeast D.C., right off of Kenilworth Avenue. When officers got here, they found 3 victims who were shot. All 3 of them were taken to the hospital, but unfortunately, we are learning this morning that 1 of them did die. Again, you can see police still out here this morning, cop cars, flashing lights, crime tape, filling this block this morning. No, we are learning that so far this year there have been at least 104 homicides compared to 95 killings at this time last year. Again, police still working to get to the bottom of exactly what happened out here. But again, we are learning 3 people shot out here, 1 person dead in DC's Kenilworth neighborhood from a shooting that went down last night.
Seems like nobody gonna have any regard for human life anymore. Even all these little kids getting shot and killed, innocent people.
Every time I hear gunshots, I always text my family, my friends, make sure everybody okay, because it could be anybody. Literally, you could talk to 1 person right now, later on they're not there.
How did we become so barbaric? A nation that rejects God. Anytime you get God out of a society, then that society has have to become uncivil.
Amen.
You become uncivilized.
Yes.
God brings order to civilization.
That's right.
How do you expect for things get better if America rejects God?
Amen.
The summer days are moving at a different pace in the Hill household.
Don't you come flying down those steps either.
No trips to the beach, theme parks, or camp.
Take your time.
Instead, Ebony Hill is focused on her family's recovery. 2 of her sons were shot at separate times this year.
Them days I spent in the hospital was the worst days of my life. Like, the worst days of my life.
Her 13-year-old son, RYTYL Hill, is now paralyzed after a bullet struck his spine back in May. I spoke with RYTYL before he started physical therapy earlier this month.
Man, it hurt.
He was standing with a group of friends outside their apartment off Douglas Street in Northeast when gunmen sprayed the neighborhood with bullets.
Why didn't I look that way the shots were coming from? Because usually I'm the one that's warning them to run, telling them to watch out or duck or move or something. When I got shot, when I feel, I went to sleep.
Ebony's 12-year-old son, RYTYL Hill, was heading home from the store on Valentine's Day when a gunman with a high-powered rifle mistook him for the target. 60 shell casings were found at the scene.
If I hear a boom noise or like firecrackers out of nowhere, I'm gonna get scared and run.
Despite the emotional and physical wounds, they're both just thankful to be here because that's not always the outcome. Their neighborhood, a reminder. The Hills got an emergency transfer to the D.C. Housing Authority and now live here in Clay Terrace, where 10-year-old Micaiah Wilson was killed last year.
This is the exact time of the shooting.
That same year, 54 kids were injured from a shooting in D.C. So far in 2019, 31 kids and teens are on that same list, about half of them in Ward 8 alone, including a 3-year-old boy wounded during a drive-by.
And the incident to the back of him.
The Hills aren't asking for more programs or police. Instead, they want the gunmen who are still out there to see what they caused, along with those thinking about picking up a gun.
Yeah, this is what I'm left with. This is what my sons is left with.
RYTYL just wants to move forward.
I was trying to forget that day, but that's when I'm made full. That's when my older brother got shot.
As for his older brother, RYTYL, doctors say he'll likely be in this wheelchair for the rest of his life. Now, he can't stop thinking about his moves before the gunfire.
I'll never forget how my legs was feeling when I tried to run. And when I turned, that was the last time I felt my legs.
Police are still looking for suspects in the latest 2 child shootings. Officers heard gunshots just after midnight Tuesday, and when they got here to 24th Place, they found Brathwaite mortally wounded. There is a $25,000 reward for information in the case. What's even more tragic, we are less than a block from where another teen, 15-year-old Gerald Watson, was shot and killed just before Christmas. He was allegedly murdered by another teenager who shot him more than 17 times. More gunfire last night, picked up by DC's Shot Spotter system, pinpointing the 1200 block of Valley Avenue, just a couple of miles from 24th Place. There, officers found a 17-year-old boy in an apartment with a gunshot wound in the forearm. He'd apparently been shot in the woods across the street and ran into the apartment for help. He's expected to be okay, but police are still looking for whoever shot him. The 16-year-old Brathwaite is the 119th person murdered in D.C. so far this year. That is a 13% rise over last year. What's going on? How do we stop it? That is still unclear.
I counted 9 of the weapons that you pictured had extended clips in them. Are you seeing more and more of these extended clips, and are we seeing more fired rounds in the city than we have ever before?
You know, I haven't done an analysis on the amount of extended clips, but I can say it certainly seems like we're seeing more and more of the extended clips. As you know, Paul, the extended clips are illegal here in the District of Columbia. We're very active in trying to get the extended clips out of our city, and we've been very successful in that regard. We recovered between 1,700 and 1,800 firearms a year here in this city. And I do think that the extended clip is attributing to some of the fatality that we've seen with our homicides. If you have more rounds, obviously more rounds are flying. The likelihood of more serious and fatal injuries is going to increase.
I want to hit pause here for a second so we can focus on the bigger picture. Our neighbors are living in fear. Families are paying with a difficult price. Nothing about that is okay. People who knew Quran say we need to stop talking about change and we need to make it happen.
Okay, we've been talking. You're a product of DC Public Schools.
I am.
Eastern High School.
I am.
The Ramblers.
Proud to be a Rambler.
Okay, and you're now leading, police efforts in the very same areas. How does it make you feel personally? I mean, when you see this violence and so much of it targeted to young people, involving young people, as either the shooter or the victim?
I'm deeply troubled. I lose a lot of sleep at night because of the senseless violence that's in our city. What I have found, along with my colleagues, is that people resort to violence from a petty dispute, some type of argument, just like what it appears that happened today, some disagreement, and someone had a firearm and they decided to use it.
I come from the hood, as many men in here come from the hood. But even the hood now is worse than it was when we were coming up. When I came up, someone stepped to you, you mixed it up, you hold your own. A fair exchange of hands. Now, because so many youth can't hold their hands, they hold iron instead. So if one get beat, pow, he want to cap you. When I came up, if you get beat, hey, best man win.
What can we do to help? What can people live in the area do to help?
Well, first, I would like for people to report the people that they know that have these illegal firearms. Whether it was young people that had firearms today or some adult that had firearms, someone know that that person had the firearm prior to the shooting, and we ask that they call the police.
Overall, how are community relations? We're sitting here and we're talking about these student shootings, and it was just days ago that DC was named the 7th safest large city in the world.
And DC is still the 7th safest large city in the world.
After a spike in murders last year, about 500 shootings, and with 2019 off to a deadly start, DC Mayor Muriel Bowser's administration finally presented a plan to the DC Council to try and stop the killings. Part of it includes beefing up the police force to 4,000, an additional 150 officers from current levels. The mayor is also pushing for faster emergency response times, working with the feds and courts to increase accountability for gun crimes, along with an expansion of the forensics lab to better collect evidence. Then there are the not-so-traditional methods like providing safe spaces in schools, launching neighborhood trauma systems, plus expanding programs like the violence interrupters. There are currently about 24 people who once served time going into troubled neighborhoods to try and stop petty arguments and disputes from leading to murders. The mayor also wants to radically expand criminal record sealing to make it easier for those with a criminal past to find a job and housing. The last time DC had a murder rate below 100 was back in 2012 with 88 homicides. Then Police Chief Kathy Lanier pointed to community trust. A record number of people were calling in tips, helping police solve at least 80% of murders that year, a number that started dropping after 2012.
The amount of gun violence that we've had in recent weeks is something that none of us should tolerate. This is not a police problem. This is not a community problem. This is everyone's problem. Everyone needs to be engaged on this issue.
Just last year, 160 people were killed in the district, making it the 2nd deadliest year in the past decade. And so far this year, according to a DC police database we just checked this morning, overall violent crime is actually up 2%.
Crime has become an issue all across the city, including right here in the Eckington, Truxton Circle, and Bloomingdale neighborhoods, the area that straddles North Capitol capital in the heart of the city. While homicides are a bit up here compared to last year, the troubling statistic has really been the number of violent crimes that have happened here. We're talking everything from homicides to sexual assaults and robberies. According to MPD, violent crime has increased more than 50% in this part of D.C. Well, in an effort to crack down on crime, city officials plan to bring the Cure the Streets program to this area. That's the Violence Interrupter program that D.C. Attorney General Karl Racine has championed. These are men and women who use mediation and try to stop fights before they happen. We talked to a few of them in February.
There have been times where I woke up and there was two guys, weapons pointing at each other, but we diffused that.
Now you may be like, what impact can violence interrupters really have? Well, in the city's Trinidad neighborhood, where they're on the ground right now, violent crime has actually gone down. And while that can't all be attributed to violence interrupters, Racine told the city council earlier this year his office has gotten a lot of positive feedback.
We've received notes and emails from residents who say they feel safer in their homes and communities.
So we need people to come in and seek help. We need family members to let us know about guns, because what we have here is one dead resident and 4 others who have been victimized. And what we also know about situations like this is that it could lead to more violence. And so what we're asking everybody to do is get in touch with us to seek the help that they need before their son or nephew or friend or boyfriend is the subject of this conversation.